My parents kicked me out of their basement apartment, the one I renovated, just to make room for my sister. So I made sure I got every penny back. Imagine pouring your heart, soul, and every last cent of your savings into transforming a dismal space into your sanctuary, only for your own parents to snatch it away and hand it to your sister. Like a casual gift. That's exactly what happened to me, Mason. And the shock, the sheer disbelief, still sends shivers down my spine. My life, just a year before, had been pretty damn good. I was 32, an electrician with my own apartment, and in a 5-year relationship I genuinely thought was heading to marriage. Then one morning, checking the weather on Amanda's phone, I found texts that ripped my world apart. My girlfriend of 5 years had been cheating. The relationship imploded that same day. Not only did I lose my partner, but the apartment we shared was suddenly unaffordable alone. Amanda's parents bought out my lease, and just like that, I was 32, homeless, and utterly adrift. "You can always stay with us until you get back on your feet," my dad, Richard, offered. My mom, Elaine, echoed on speakerphone. "The basement is just sitting there empty. It's private." Their offer felt like a lifeline. I accepted with immense gratitude, picturing a temporary stay, a few months to save up again. But when I arrived, the basement was a shock. It wasn't just empty. It was a musty, forgotten cave. Cold, cracked concrete floors. A drop ceiling stained from ancient water damage. Bare bulbs, casting harsh, depressing shadows. The bathroom looked like it hadn't been updated since 1972, and dark wood paneling swallowed what little light there was. After a sleepless night on an air mattress, staring at that depressing ceiling, an idea sparked. As an electrician with friends in every trade, I had the skills. What if I renovate the basement? I proposed to my parents. I could turn it into a proper apartment. It would add serious value to your house, and I'd have a decent place to stay. My dad's eyes lit up. My mom was thrilled. "We've wanted to fix that up for years," she exclaimed. We shook hands. I'd provide the labor and materials, in lieu of rent, with the understanding I'd stay for at least 1 to 2 years. No contracts. Why would I need one? These were my parents. I trusted them completely. I threw myself into that renovation with the focus of a man trying to heal. Every day after my job, I'd put in another 4 or 5 hours. Weekends were entirely dedicated to it. The physical labor was therapy, channeling my emotional pain into something productive. First, the demolition. Tearing out the paneling, the stained ceiling, jackhammering those cracked floors. My friend Jake, a contractor, helped with the heavy stuff and guided me. Then, the foundation, sealing cracks. Installing a sump pump, waterproofing. I wasn't going to build something beautiful only for it to flood. Once it was a blank canvas, the real magic began. New electrical, recessed lighting, plenty of outlets. I framed out separate rooms for a bedroom, living area, and kitchen. Insulation, too, for warmth and soundproofing. The tiny bathroom became a spacious retreat with a walk-in shower, modern vanity, and proper ventilation. For the kitchen, I found clearance cabinetry, bought new stainless steel appliances, and even splurged on quartz countertops. The flooring was a luxurious vinyl plank that looked like hardwood but could handle basement moisture. I painted the walls in warm, neutral tones and added trim, making it feel custom-built. The crowning glory was a separate entrance. I widened a window well, installed concrete steps, and added a steel door. Now I had my independence. I furnished it with new pieces and quality secondhand finds. After 6 months and $17,000 of my personal savings, not counting the untold hours of labor, that 800-square-foot basement was a showstopper. "I can't believe this is the same basement," my mom gasped. "You could charge rent for a place like this." My dad slapped my back. "You've increased the value of our home by at least $30,000, Mason. You have a real talent." I settled into my new apartment, brimming with pride. It was comfortable, it was mine. Life found its rhythm again. Gym in the mornings, work during the day, evenings in my sanctuary, or occasionally joining my parents upstairs. I was rebuilding my savings, slowly healing from the breakup. For the first few months, it was perfect. Then, things started to shift. My parents would abruptly end phone calls when I entered the room. I'd catch them whispering. When I asked if everything was okay, they'd offer overly bright smiles. and change the subject. Just boring retirement stuff, my dad would say. Planning a surprise, my mom would deflect. I dismissed it, thinking it was just some private matter. They had been so supportive. I had no reason to suspect the betrayal that was brewing. My younger sister, Diana, and I have always had a complicated relationship. She was the family favorite, the artistic one with big dreams who could do no wrong. 3 years my junior, she'd moved to California after college to chase a fashion design career, while I stayed home, building a stable life as an electrician. My parents never hid their pride in Diana, often introducing her as our daughter, the fashion designer in Los Angeles, while I was our son, the electrician. I'd made peace with that dynamic years ago. The first hint of Diana's return came at a Sunday dinner. I spoke with your sister yesterday, my mom casually mentioned. Her fashion startup is having some issues. Issues? Financial? My dad interjected. Their investor pulled out. They had to close the studio. My mom sighed dramatically. She's taking it pretty hard. I offered the appropriate sympathetic response, though I admit, part of me wondered if Diana was finally facing reality. 2 weeks later, the real news dropped. Diana is moving back home for a while to regroup. I just nodded. When's she coming? Next week. We're preparing the guest room upstairs. The guest room was small but fine. With me downstairs, everyone would have space. Diana arrived with 6 suitcases and an air of defeated entitlement. Dinner that night was the Diana show. Betrayal by her business partner, the unfairness of LA, the trauma of leaving her apartment. My parents clucked sympathetically. I just nodded, trying to be understanding despite her flair for drama. After dinner, she asked to see my apartment. I gave her the tour, feeling a strange pride. Wow, this is actually really nice, she said, genuinely surprised. It's like a real apartment down here. You did all this yourself? Most of it, I replied. Had some friends help, but yeah, I designed and built it out. She walked through, her hand tracing the countertops. This is so much bigger than the guest room, she murmured. And you have your own entrance. Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I brushed it off. Diana had always been envious. The very next morning, I overheard Diana complaining to Mom. It's tiny, Mom. I can barely fit my clothes. The desk is too small for my design work. I know, honey, but it's temporary. I don't understand why I'm crammed in that little room when Mason has a whole apartment downstairs. He has an actual living room and kitchen. Well, he did build that space himself. Mom's voice trailed off. So he's been living here rent-free, right? I need more space if I'm going to rebuild my portfolio. My stomach clenched. I walked away before hearing Mom's response. That evening, the meaningful glances between my parents started again. Diana kept making passive-aggressive comments about her cramped quarters. The situation escalated the following week, when she announced her boyfriend, Trevor, was visiting from LA. He's considering moving here, too, she explained. He'll stay in my room. My parents looked uncomfortable, but agreed. Trevor, a tall surfer type with an expensive watch and vague talk of digital marketing opportunities, arrived 2 days later. His 3-day visit stretched to a week, then 2. The house felt like a pressure cooker. They'd sleep until noon, commandeer the kitchen for elaborate brunches, and dominate the living room for movie marathons. My parents seemed increasingly stressed, but said nothing. Then, I started overhearing their arguments. This isn't working, Elaine, my dad said one night. The house is too full. I know, but what are we supposed to do? She's our daughter. She needs our support. Mason's our son, too, and he actually improved our house. Diana's always been more sensitive. She needs more help getting back on her feet. Mason is established in his career. He could find his own place easily. We made an agreement with him about the basement. Yes, but circumstances have changed. We need to think about what's best for both our children. Their words confirmed my deepest fears, but I still wasn't ready for the bombshell. Sunday family dinners were a tradition. This particular Sunday, the atmosphere was thick with dread. My mom had prepared all my favorite foods: pot roast, garlic mashed potatoes, apple pie. Red flag. Number 1. ***. My parents were unusually quiet, exchanging nervous glances. Red flag number 2. Diana, however, was cheerful, almost smug. Red flag number 3. As my mother served dessert, My father cleared his throat. Mason, we need to discuss something important. My appetite vanished. What's up? He stared at his plate, unable to meet my eyes. Your mother and I have been talking, and we think. Well, given the situation with Diana moving back. My mother jumped in. What your father is trying to say is that we need to make some changes to our living arrangements. I looked between them, already knowing, but needing to hear it. What kind of changes? We think it would be best if Diana took over the basement apartment. My father finally said. She needs more space for her design work. And with Trevor potentially moving here, too. You're kicking me out. The words felt surreal, leaving my mouth. After I renovated the entire basement with my own money? Not kicking you out, my mother said quickly. Just asking you to find your own place. You're established in your career. You have savings. Diana is starting over from scratch. Diana finally spoke up, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. I'm really sorry, Mason. I know it's not ideal, but I really do need the space more than you right now. When? I asked, my voice tight. We think 30 days is reasonable, my father replied. That should give you enough time to find an apartment. 30 days. I repeated numbly. And what about the $17,000 I invested in renovating your basement? The countless hours of labor? The agreement we had that I could stay for at least a year? My parents exchanged another glance. We understand it's not entirely fair, my mother admitted. We're prepared to give you $2,000 to help with your moving expenses and compensate for some of the work. $2,000? I laughed, incredulous. The materials alone cost more than 3 times that. I installed new electrical, plumbing, drywall, flooring. I built a kitchen from nothing. $2,000 doesn't even cover the appliances I bought. The improvements you made are to our house, my father countered, his tone hardening. The agreement was that you did the work instead of paying rent. You've lived here 8 months rent-free, in a nice apartment. An apartment I created. I stood up, unable to contain my anger. That basement was unlivable. Before I transformed it, you're stealing my investment and giving it to Diana. Diana rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. It's just some paint and fixtures. I'll probably redo. A lot of it anyway. That gray color scheme is so depressing. I stared at her, speechless. Just some paint and fixtures. Her dismissive comment about undoing my careful work was like salt in an open wound. I think you're overreacting, my mother said. We're still giving you money to help. This isn't about the money. I snapped. Though, of course, the money was part of it. This is about betrayal. We had an agreement. I trusted you. Circumstances change, my father said firmly. Diana needs our help right now. I'm sorry if you feel it's unfair, but our decision is final. 30 days, Mason. I left the table without another word, retreating to my soon-to-be former apartment. Once inside, I sat on the couch I had carefully selected, looking around at all my work. The recessed lighting-eyed, painstakingly installed, the kitchen island I'd built by hand, the custom shelving, all created with care, with the understanding that this was my home. I pulled out my phone and flipped through the before and after photos. The transformation was remarkable. The dingy, unusable basement had become a stylish, comfortable apartment that had significantly increased my parents' home value. Unable to sleep, I called my best friend, Garrett, at nearly midnight. They're giving you 30 days? After everything you did? Garrett's outrage validated my own feelings. That's insane. And only $2,000. Yeah, apparently Diana needs the space more than I do, I said, bitterness heavy in my voice. This is about Diana, let me guess. Another one of her dreams failed, and now she's back home, expecting everyone to accommodate her. Got it in one. Her fashion startup tanked, and now she's moving back with her boyfriend in tow. That's messed up, man. What are you going to do? I sighed, staring at the ceiling I had so carefully painted. I don't know yet. Find an apartment, I guess. But I'm not just walking away from my investment. That's for damn sure. You can crash at my place if you need to, Garrett offered. Spare room is yours as long as you need it. The offer of genuine support almost broke me. Thanks, man. I might take you up on that. I lay awake for hours, cycling through shock, hurt, anger, and disbelief. How could my parents do this? How could they so casually disregard our agreement? How could they value Diana's needs so far above mine? By morning, my hurt had crystallized into cold resolve. I would leave, as requested. But not before ensuring I received fair compensation. If my parents wanted to treat our agreement as a business transaction, then I would respond in kind. They would learn that betraying me had consequences. The morning after the bombshell, I called in sick. I needed to think. My first call was to Bernard Collins, a lawyer who'd done contract work for my business. I explained the situation. It's complicated without a written agreement, Bernard explained. But there's a legal concept called unjust enrichment. Someone shouldn't benefit unfairly at another's expense. The key is documentation. Can you prove what it looked like before? Do you have receipts? Photos of the work? I have all of that. I replied, a glimmer of hope. I documented the entire renovation. Good. Here's what you do. Following Bernard's advice, I spent the day creating a meticulous record of my investment. Receipts for every purchase, from appliances to switch plates. Before, during, and after photos. A spreadsheet itemizing labor hours, calculated at what I'd charge a client. Next, I called Jake, my contractor friend. I need your professional opinion, I explained. Jake was furious. On my behalf. That's cold, man. Really cold. I asked what items I could legally remove. Personal property versus permanent fixtures. Appliances, for sure, if you bought them, he said. Lighting. Fixtures can be replaced. Bathroom fixtures, cabinet hardware, anything reasonably removed without damaging the structure. I made a list. What about the mini-split AC heating system? I asked. That's a gray area. You could argue it's yours if you bought and installed it, but they might fight you. I also researched rental prices for comparable basement apartments. If my parents wanted to treat this as a landlord-tenant situation, market rate rent for my apartment would have been at least $1,200 a month. 8 months of free rent was worth about $9,600. But that still left a huge gap between my investment and their $2,000 offer. Armed with this information, I attempted another conversation. I laid out the documentation on their kitchen table, receipts, photos, labor calculations, rental listings. According to my calculations, I explained calmly, the total value of improvements I made is approximately $32,000, including materials and labor. Subtracting 8 months of market rate rent at $1,200 per month. That still leaves $22,400 that I have essentially gifted to you. My father barely glanced at the paperwork. This isn't a business transaction, Mason. It's a family matter. It became a business transaction when you decided to evict me from the space I created, I countered. I'm simply asking for fair compensation. We've already offered you $2,000, my mother said. That's generous considering you've lived here. Rent-free. Rent-free in exchange for renovations that increased your property value by over $30,000. I reminded them. $2,000 doesn't begin to cover it. What exactly are you asking for? My father demanded. $22,000. That's the value of my improvements, minus the rental value of my stay. My father laughed dismissively. That's ridiculous. We don't have that kind of money just sitting around. Then perhaps Diana should find her own apartment, and I should stay in the space I created, as agreed. That's not happening, my mother said firmly. Diana needs our support right now. And I don't. I asked quietly. The silence that followed told me everything about where I stood in their priorities. Our offer is $2,000, my father finally said. Take it or leave it. I gathered my documentation and stood up. Then I'll be taking everything that legally belongs to me. When I leave, every appliance, fixture, and feature that I purchased with my own money. You can't just strip the basement, my mother protested. Actually, I can. I have receipts for everything. Items I purchased remain my property unless specifically gifted to you, which they weren't. My father's face reddened. This is how you want to handle this? Like some kind of mercenary. I learned from the best. I replied coldly, leaving them staring after me in shock. Diana had been eavesdropping. You're being incredibly selfish, she said as I passed. Mom and Dad have done everything for you. And nothing for you, right? I replied sarcastically. Enjoy the basement, Diana. What's left of it anyway? Back in my apartment, I began formulating my 3-phase exit strategy. Phase 1 was complete. Documentation and legal consultation. Phase 2. Systematically remove everything I had a right to. Take. Phase 3. Negotiate a final settlement from a position of strength. My parents had made a critical error in judgment. They assumed I would simply accept their decision and walk away from my investment. They were about to learn how wrong they were. With my strategy mapped out, I requested 2 weeks of vacation from work. My boss, Gerald, was surprised. I rarely took time off, but approved it without question. This would give me the uninterrupted time I needed for Phase 2. I started by hiring a professional home appraiser to document the current value of the apartment. Patricia, a no-nonsense woman, spent over 2 hours taking measurements, photos, and notes. Based on the quality of work here, she concluded, I'd estimate these improvements add approximately $32,000 to $35,000 to the home's value. The separate entrance alone adds significant value, not to mention the high-end bathroom and kitchen. Her official report would take a few days, but she provided a preliminary assessment letter. This third-party validation was exactly what I needed. Next, I created a detailed video walkthrough, narrating each improvement I'd made and highlighting items I'd purchased. I time-stamped it and showed close-ups of custom features. I also contacted friends who had helped, asking for signed statements confirming their involvement. Several were outraged on my behalf and readily agreed. Your parents are seriously doing this to you? My coworker Rachel asked. After everything you did? Apparently Diana's failed fashion career takes precedence over our agreement. I replied, bitterness in my voice. That's cold. Rachel shook her head. What can I do to help? Just sign this statement confirming you helped me install the recessed lighting. I'm building a case. With documentation complete, I began the systematic removal. I started with easy items, my television, clothes, small decor. These normal moving activities didn't raise alarms with my parents, who seemed relieved I was complying. On day 3, I began removing the first major items. The ceiling fans. I carefully detached them, patched the ceiling, and installed basic light fixtures. In their place, the mini-split AC heating system, a $3,200 investment, was next. I'd specifically chosen a model that could be uninstalled and reinstalled elsewhere. I spent half a day carefully removing it, sealing the wall penetrations, and packaging it for storage. By the end of the first week, my parents started to notice. My mother came downstairs while I was removing the custom shower fixtures, replacing them with the basic builder-grade ones that had been there originally. What are you doing? She asked, alarmed. Taking what belongs to me. I replied calmly, not pausing. I purchased these fixtures. Here's the receipt if you'd like to see it. She watched in dismay. But the bathroom won't be functional without a shower head. It will have the same basic shower head it had before I renovated, I said. I'm not removing anything that would make the space unusable, just returning it to its original state or replacing my purchases with basic equivalents. This feels vindictive, she said quietly. I finally turned to look at her. Vindictive would be removing everything and leaving holes in the walls. I'm simply reclaiming my property while leaving the space in functional condition. If Diana wants luxury fixtures, she can purchase them herself, just like I did. My mother left without further comment, but I heard her and my father arguing upstairs that evening. The most dramatic confrontation came when I began disconnecting the stainless steel refrigerator, stove, and dishwasher. Diana stormed downstairs, Trevor trailing behind her. You can't take the appliances, she shouted. How am I supposed to cook? The same way I was supposed to before I installed them, Diana. I replied, continuing to unhook the water line from the refrigerator. There was no kitchen here before I built one. If you want appliances, you can buy your own. Mom. Dad. Diana yelled up the stairs. Mason is gutting the kitchen. My father came downstairs, his face flushed with anger. This has gone far enough, Mason. You're being childish. I straightened up and faced him. I'm being childish? You broke our agreement, offered me a fraction of what my work is worth, and expected me to just accept it. Now you're upset that I'm taking my own property with me. Those appliances are part of the house now, he insisted. No, they're not. I pulled the folder from my backpack. I have the receipts right here. Purchased by me, installed by me, owned by me. I never gifted them to you or the house. I'll call the police if you keep this up, he threatened. Go ahead, I challenged. I've already consulted a lawyer. Everything I'm taking is legally mine. But by all means, get the authorities involved. I'm sure they'd be interested to hear about how you're trying to claim ownership of property you didn't pay for. The mention of legal counsel gave him pause. He stared at me for a long moment, then at the half-dismantled kitchen. This isn't what we wanted, Mason. What did you want, Dad? For me to invest thousands of dollars and countless hours creating a beautiful living space, then simply hand it over to Diana because she failed in California? For me to quietly accept being devalued and dismissed after everything I contributed to this house? He had no answer. By the end of the second week, the transformation was complete, in reverse. The basement was still improved from its original state. I couldn't remove the drywall or structural changes, but all the high-end finishes, appliances, and fixtures that had made it special were gone, replaced with basic functional equivalents or removed entirely. My parents and Diana watched the dismantling with increasing alarm, but they couldn't stop me. Every item I removed was clearly mine, documented with receipts and photographs. I was careful to maintain the basic habitability of the space. I wasn't trying to make it unlivable, just to reclaim what was rightfully mine. As I neared completion, my parents attempted to backtrack. Maybe we can work something out, my mother suggested tentatively. Perhaps you could stay a bit longer while Diana finds another option. Too late, I replied. I've already signed a month-to-month lease on an apartment. I move out this weekend. The truth was, I had accepted Garrett's offer of temporary housing, but they didn't need to know that. The dismay on their faces when they realized their beautiful basement apartment was now a shadow of what it had been, and that I was actually leaving, gave me a small sense of satisfaction. With the physical removal complete, I moved on to Phase 3, legal and financial settlement. Bernard sent a formal demand letter outlining the improvements, their market value, and the compensation sought. The letter included copies of the appraiser's report, receipts, before and after documentation, and witness statements. The demand was simple: $24,000 compensation for improvements, minus the $2,000 they'd offered, for a total of $22,000. It concluded that if a satisfactory resolution wasn't reached within 10 days, we would pursue legal action for unjust enrichment. My parents received the letter 3 days after I moved out. I had expected anger, but their actual reaction surprised me. My father called, his voice subdued. We need to talk about this letter from your lawyer. We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. Both my parents arrived looking tired and somewhat defeated. $22,000 is still too much, my father began without preamble. The appraiser valued the improvements at $35,000, I countered. Even after accounting for my rent-free stay, $22,000 is more than fair. We don't have that kind of cash available, my mother said. You have home equity, I replied. The renovations I did increased your property value. You can take out a home equity loan. They exchanged glances. We've discussed it, my father admitted. We could potentially offer $18,000. $22,000, I maintained firmly. That's already a compromise from the full value. After another hour of negotiation, we settled on $22,000 total, the original $2,000 plus an additional $20,000. They would apply for a home equity loan the following week, with payment within 30 days. I'll have Bernard draw up a settlement agreement, I said as we concluded. Is this really necessary? My mother asked. The legal documents, the formal agreement? We're family. We were family when you broke our original agreement, I reminded her. This time everything will be in writing. 2 weeks later, we met at Bernard's office to sign the settlement agreement. My parents brought their own lawyer, looking uncomfortable as they reviewed the terms. Diana wasn't present, but I learned later she was furious when she discovered my parents had given in to my demands. When the funds were finally transferred to my account a week later, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Vindication, certainly, but also sadness that our relationship had devolved to this point. What should have been a mutually beneficial arrangement had become a legal battle over money and property. But I had stood my ground and received fair compensation. That was something. With the settlement money in hand, I began searching for a permanent place to live. Garrett had been Generous, but after a month of couch surfing, I was ready for my own space. The housing market was tight, but the $22,000 settlement provided a substantial down payment I hadn't had before. After viewing nearly 20 properties, I found a small 2-bedroom condo in a quiet complex about 15 minutes from work. It needed some cosmetic updates, but had good bones, much like the basement when I started. The asking price was reasonable, and with my down payment, the monthly mortgage would be less than typical rent in the area. "You're sure you want to buy instead of rent?" Garrett asked as he helped me move in. "That's a big commitment after everything that happened." "I'm done investing in other people's property," I replied. "At least this time, any improvements I make will be mine to keep." The first few weeks in my new place were liberating. I unpacked slowly, setting up my rescued appliances and fixtures, planning the updates. This space was truly mine. No one could take it away on a whim or decide someone else deserved it more. The distance between my parents and me continued to grow. They called occasionally with awkward attempts at normal conversation, but the betrayal remained an unspoken barrier. I was polite, but brief, unwilling to pretend nothing had happened. Diana, meanwhile, was experiencing the reality of the now basic basement apartment. According to mutual friends, she complained incessantly about the missing amenities, the basic bathroom fixtures, the lack of kitchen appliances, the inadequate heating and cooling. My parents had purchased some replacement items, but not at the quality level I had installed. In late October, I received a text from my mother. "We're having Thanksgiving dinner at 2 p.m. We'd love for you to join us." I declined politely, explaining I had other plans. In truth, I had accepted an invitation from Rachel and her family, unwilling to sit across the table from Diana and pretend all was well. As Christmas approached, the attempts at reconciliation increased. My father called one evening. "Your mother misses you," he said without preamble. "We both do. I miss aspects of our relationship, too," I replied carefully. "But things are different now. Can't we move past this?" he asked. "It's been months." "Moving past it requires acknowledgement of what happened," I explained. "You broke our agreement. You prioritized Diana's wants over my needs and the commitment you made to me. That fundamentally changed our relationship." "We made a mistake," he admitted, the first time either of them had acknowledged any wrongdoing. "We should have handled it differently." It was a start, but not enough for me to simply return to normal family relations. "I need time," I told him, "and clear boundaries going forward." Christmas came and went. I sent gifts but declined the invitation to dinner, spending the day with friends who had become more like family. In January, an unexpected visitor arrived at my condo. My father, alone and looking uncomfortable. "Can I come in?" he asked. "I'd like to see what you've done with the place." I hesitated but stepped aside. He walked slowly through the condo, nodding at the improvements I'd already made. New paint, updated lighting, refinished cabinets. "You've got a real talent for this," he said, echoing words he'd spoken about the basement nearly a year earlier. "The place looks great." "Thanks," I replied, uncertain where this was heading. He sat heavily on my couch, looking older. Then I remembered. "I came to say, I'm sorry," he said finally. "What we did to you was wrong. We got caught up in trying to help Diana and didn't consider what it would do to you, to our relationship with you." The apology, though months overdue, still meant something. "I appreciate you saying that." "Diana and Trevor broke up," he continued. "She's talking about moving to New York now. The basement might be empty again soon." I couldn't help but laugh. The classic Diana cycle: chase a dream, fail, retreat home, make new plans, repeat. My father's mouth twitched. "That's not entirely fair, but not entirely wrong either." He sighed. "We've enabled her. I see that now, and we hurt you in the process." That acknowledgement began a slow healing process. I didn't immediately return to regular family dinners, but I did start accepting occasional invitations. Our relationship was different, more careful, more bounded, but it was a relationship nonetheless. Diana did indeed move out of the basement 2 months later, heading to New York with vague plans about fashion journalism. The basement apartment sat empty, a monument to misplaced priorities and broken trust. In a surprising development, my parents called in early spring, asking if I would help them fix an Electrical issue. The kitchen outlets keep tripping the breaker, my father explained. I got a quote from an electrician, but I thought maybe it was an olive branch of sorts. An acknowledgement of my skills and a small step toward rebuilding trust. I agreed to take a look, spending a Sunday afternoon rewiring their kitchen circuit. We worked side by side in a way that felt familiar yet new, my father handing me tools while I explained what I was doing. We miss having you around, he admitted as we finished. The house feels different without you. I miss certain things, too, I replied honestly. But I'm happy in my condo. It's important for me to have my own space that no one can take away. He nodded, understanding the subtext. You've done well for yourself, Mason. I'm proud of how you handled everything, even though it was hard for us at the time. That comment, simple as it was, helped heal something deep inside me. The acknowledgement that I had been right to stand up for myself, to demand fair treatment, validated the difficult stand I had taken. Over the following months, my career continued to thrive. The confidence I had gained from standing up to my parents translated into assertiveness at work. I successfully negotiated a promotion and raised my rates for side jobs. I began dating again, approaching relationships with clearer boundaries and expectations. 6 months after moving out, I received an unexpected invitation. My parents wanted my opinion on a potential kitchen renovation. Nothing major, my mother explained. But we're thinking about updating the cabinets and countertops. You have such a good eye for these things. I politely declined to take on the project myself, but offered advice on materials and layout. I can recommend a good contractor, I told them. Jake did excellent work on my condo bathroom. They accepted the recommendation without pressing for more involvement, a small but significant respect for my boundaries that I appreciated. Nearly a year after the eviction, my parents invited me to dinner at their house. I arrived to find only the three of us. No Diana, no drama. My mother had prepared my favorite meal, reminiscent of that fateful Sunday dinner, but this time without ulterior motives. Over dessert, my father cleared his throat. We want you to know that we understand now how badly we handled the situation with the basement. Breaking our agreement with you was wrong, and trying to undervalue your contribution was worse. My mother reached across the table to touch my hand. We let our tendency to rush to Diana's rescue cloud our judgment. It cost us your trust and nearly cost us our relationship with you. I appreciate that, I said, genuinely moved by their acknowledgement. It took me a while to understand that this wasn't just about the basement or the money. It was about feeling like my contributions and needs didn't matter as much as Diana's. They do matter, my father insisted. We lost sight of that temporarily, but never again. Remarkably, Diana herself called me a few weeks later. Her New York adventure had ended predictably. Another failed attempt, another retreat. But this time, she had rented her own apartment instead of moving back to our parents' basement. I get it now, she admitted. What it means to create your own space, to invest in something and have it be yours. I was wrong to expect them to give me your apartment, and I was wrong about how easy it would be to replace what you built. Her apology, while not changing the past, provided a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. As I look back on that turbulent year, I realized that standing up for myself changed more than just my living situation. It transformed my relationship with my family, establishing boundaries and respect that hadn't existed before. It boosted my confidence and self-worth in ways that extended to every area of my life. And perhaps most importantly, it taught my parents and sister valuable lessons about fairness, consequences, and the true meaning of family support. It's been just over a year since I moved out of my parents' basement apartment, and looking back, I can see how that painful experience transformed my life in unexpected ways. My condo has become the home I always wanted. I've painted every room, installed new flooring in the kitchen, and upgraded the bathroom with some of the fixtures I salvaged from the basement. Each improvement feels different, knowing it's mine to keep, mine to enjoy, mine to benefit from if I ever decide to sell. The relationship with my parents has found a new equilibrium. We'll never return to the blind trust I once had, but in many ways, our current relationship is healthier. There are clear boundaries now, mutual respect, and a shared understanding that family bonds don't give anyone the right to take advantage of another. We have dinner together once a month, always at a restaurant or my place. Never at their house. Some wounds heal, but leave scars that remind us to be more careful next time. Diana and I have reached a cautious truce. Her latest venture, a small online boutique selling curated vintage clothing, seems more grounded than her previous dreams. She even asked for my advice on setting up reliable payment processing on her website. The basement apartment saga taught her something too. It seems about consequences, about appreciation for others' work, about the reality that dreams require practical foundations. The settlement money changed my financial trajectory, allowing me to become a homeowner years earlier than I would have otherwise. But the most valuable things I gained from the experience weren't financial. I learned to document everything, even with family. I learned that standing up for myself doesn't make me selfish or unreasonable. I learned that my work has value that deserves recognition and fair compensation. These lessons have served me well beyond family matters. At work, I'm no longer the guy who takes on extra projects without recognition or compensation. I've become more assertive about my contributions and more confident in negotiating rates that reflect my skills. My boss, Gerald, recently commented that he respects my professionalism and clear boundaries, qualities that emerged directly from the basement apartment conflict. In personal relationships, too, I've changed. I'm more careful about establishing clear expectations and agreements. I'm quicker to address potential issues rather than assuming they'll work themselves out. And I'm far better at recognizing when someone is taking advantage of my good nature or work ethic. The experience also taught me about forgiveness. Not the blind, automatic forgiveness that pretends harm never happened, but the measured, mindful forgiveness that acknowledges wrong while choosing to move forward. I've forgiven my parents and Diana, not because what they did was acceptable, but because holding on to anger would only limit my own happiness and growth. Perhaps, most importantly, I've learned that self-respect must come before seeking others' respect. When I demonstrated that I valued my own work and contribution enough to demand fair treatment, others began to value me more highly, too. The confidence I gained from standing firm in that difficult family situation has rippled through every aspect of my life. Last week, I hosted a small dinner party at my condo. My parents, a few close friends, even Diana. As we gathered around the table I built myself, using the salvaged appliances from the basement to prepare the meal, there was a moment when my father raised his glass in a toast. To Mason, he said, who taught us all that true family strength comes not from blind accommodation, but from mutual respect and fairness. I could see in his eyes that he meant it, that the hard lessons of the past year had genuinely changed his perspective. In that moment, I realized that by refusing to be devalued, I had ultimately created the possibility for a healthier family dynamic for all of us. So if you're facing a situation where your contributions are being minimized or taken for granted, whether with family, friends, or colleagues, remember that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Document your work. Know your worth. Establish clear agreements. And if those agreements are broken, be prepared to advocate for yourself with confidence and determination. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of your generosity? What did you do, and how did it change your relationship? Let me know in the comments below if this story resonated with you. And remember, sometimes the most important respect you can earn is your own. Take care of yourselves, and don't let anyone renovate your self-worth.